Sly Cooper, one of my favorite series for the PS2, a combination of cel-shading art style, the interactiveness of the music, witty, playful dialogue between characters, and just an overall great story. Even after all these years, my mind still wanders back to the events of the Sly Cooper games. I have fond memories of playing the first Sly Cooper game as a child, and I don't even consider it my favorite of the original trio. It's astounding to think it's been over 2 decades since the first game release, and this year, 2024, it had been 20 years since the second game, Band of Thieves. We wouldn't see another Sly game until 2013, with Thieves in Time for the PS3, and unfortunately I cannot recall playing that one for the life of me. Since then, Sly fans have awaited an announcement for the 5th installment of the series, despite a statement released in 2014 by Zanzura Games that they had no plans on developing a future game. But the hope lives on, with the Sly Cooper Reddit still having a fairly active community. Perhaps one day we will see a much anticipated 5th game, especially since the secret ending of the 4th game shows Sly to still be alive, but somehow in Egypt. We will just have to wait and see. But until then, let us talk about the game that started it all, Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. Released in September of 2002 by Sucker Punch Productions, we begin our journey into the world of the Cooper family. But before Sucker Punch had the idea to bring the thieving raccoon story to the PS2, they first released a smaller scale platform game for the N64 named Rocket, Robot on Wheels. The game received mostly positive reviews but was not considered commercially successful. From this, the team knew that they wanted to create a more memorable mascot for their next project. What's more memorable than a raccoon who comes from a long line of thieving, since raccoons are known for stealing from garbage cans? They also designed Sly to be wearing a bandit mask, which is also ironic because raccoons' facial markings just genuinely look like that. According to Fleming, the sight gag of a raccoon putting on a mask somehow seemed super funny to us. Learning from their previous game, the team approached Sony to publish the game on PS2. Doing this meant the team could focus on its development since they only had to work on the game for one platform. The creative director Nate Fox described the launch of Sly Cooper as a tense experience due to the Sucker Punch team at the time being unproven and wasn't sure whether the game would be successful. Upon the game's release, it was both a commercial and critical success, selling nearly 1 million copies, heavily surpassing the team's expectations, and thus cementing Sucker Punch as one of Sony's best developers alongside Naughty Dog and Insomniac. What is Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus about? Well, we are introduced to our main trio, Sly Cooper, our raccoon main protagonist, Bentley, a turtle who provides the brains of the operation, and Murray, the brute but lovable hippopotamus who drives the getaway van. The first mission in the game is centered around stealing a case file containing information about the Fiendish Five. You see, Sly comes from a long line of thieves who specialize in stealing from criminals because, in the words of Sly himself, there's no honor, no challenge, no fun stealing from ordinary people. And from this long family line of thieves, there is an ancient book passed down through generations called the Thievius Raccoonus. But on the night that Sly was to inherit the book, at only 8 years old, a group of criminals known as the Fiendish Five invaded the Cooper home, murdering Sly's parents, stealing the Thievius Raccoonus, and splitting up the book into 5 pieces, with each villain fleeing to the farthest corners of the earth. Unfortunately from this, Sly was placed in an orphanage. But he did meet his soon-to-be lifelong friends, Bentley and Murray. At age 16, they left the orphanage and formed a group named the Cooper Gang and swore to avenge his family, tracking down the Fiendish Five and recovering the pages of the Thievius Raccoonus. And now, 2 years after that, is where we begin the story of the game. We start off in the romantic city of Paris, France at 4:20 in the morning as we are attempting to steal the police case file. We get witty and funny exchanges of dialogue between our trio while also having basic game mechanics explained to us, such as how to perform a super sneaky master thief move. After retrieving the file, we are introduced to another character, Carmelita Fox, who totally didn't awaken something in me at the ripe age of 10 years old. She acts as a kind of antagonist, but never truly poses a threat to Sly outside of the few chase scenes that they have, which of course always includes Sly trying to, and successfully flirting with her. Once you've completed the first mission, you are brought back to the gang's hideout where you truly begin the start of the main story quest lines. The game is separated into chapters of sorts. When you start each new chapter, you get to watch a quick cutscene animation of the backstory for the villain of said chapter. These cutscenes are one of my favorite parts of the Sly series, and even after 20 years, the animations still look incredible. Each chapter is then separated into multiple parts. When first starting, you'll begin in the introduction level, followed by the hub stage. From there, the rest of the levels are split into 2 parts. The main goal of each level is to retrieve the treasure keys. These keys are then used to unlock the second part of a chapter's levels that ultimately lead to the villain fight. There are also clue bottles to collect that allow Sly to have access to a safe in the level that contains a page from the Thievius Raccoonus. These will give Sly new moves to help with movement, combat, or stealth. With 5 total chapters in the game, it scales in difficulty as you progress, with the first chapter being named Tide of Terror and Sir Rowley the Frog as the villain. This chapter is fairly easy to complete, with only taking around 50 minutes from the start of the chapter to beating the villain if you don't die. And speaking of dying, Sly Cooper does dying and lives kind of differently than most games of similar playstyles. Because the game is based around being as sneaky as possible, it would only make sense that Sly is kind of squishy when it comes to combat. With his only weapon being his cane, Sly can die to only 1 hit. However, However, the game occasionally gives you lucky horseshoes that allow Sly to take extra hits. If you do, however, get hit, Sly will collapse and you will restart at your last checkpoint. And if you lose all your lives, you will restart from the beginning of the level. But getting back to the first chapter, Tide of Terror, with Sir Rally being our villain, his hideout being hidden in the Isle of Wrath, nestled in the Welsh Isle. He came from a background of luxury and privilege, but grew bored and longed for something better. He decided to try his hand at piracy, and became addicted. He was brought on to the Fiendish Five as chief machinist, as he put his impressive tech skills and deep pockets to work, making a storm machine that causes constant bad weather to sink ships loaded with treasure. The levels of this chapter consist of infiltrating several areas of the island, such as the engine room, Raleigh's treasury, the power room for the storm machine, a booby-trapped library, and a wrecked ship graveyard. There's also a special level that's more of a mini-game, where you dive down underwater using a submarine to fend off crabs while they try to take away treasure chests. I remember as a child this level would take me excruciatingly long, with so many bouts of rage quitting. Actually surprised I never broke a controller as a child. Finally, after beating all of these stages, you reach the final level and face off against Sir Rally the Frog inside the storm machine. The fight is fairly basic and consists of Sir Rally bloating himself up, attempting to crush Sly. Sir Rally will hop around when he's all bloated up, and then eventually deflates, making him susceptible to being hit. The next two stages of the fight are almost the same, but the platforms around you will sink into the water. In the fourth and final phase, all of the platforms except the one that Sly is standing on will sink, and Sir Rally will jump down and start spinning with his tongue out. Once he deflates after this, you deliver one final blow and you've defeated Sir Rally the Frog. After defeating the villain of each chapter, you get a cinematic of the gang fleeing the scene while Carmelita Fox comes in and arrests the villain. All of the villains besides the final chapter have very similar battle styles that consist of dodging the villain and performing a stage gimmick of sorts. With each chapter, you are brought to a different part of the world, going from Paris to the Welsh Triangle, Utah, Haiti, China, and Russia. Each chapter having its own personality is what really makes this game stand out to me as a classic. And for a game that came out in 2002, the graphics still hold up incredibly well. With its use of cel-shading rendering, it gives the game a film noir feel, or a 1950s vibe. It's almost like a cartoon that has come to life. At the time of Sucker Punch being such a small and unproven studio, they were able to nearly go toe-to-toe with bigger games of that year like Ratchet and Clank. Another thing that I've always found interesting about this game is that once you've collected everything for a level, you unlock that level's time trial. What this does is it gives you the option to race against a preset timer to try and complete the level as fast as possible. You don't need to kill any enemies or collect a certain amount of coins. All you do is run. The time trials are by far one of the more difficult things to complete in the game. And you're probably asking yourself, why would I bother? What's the reward for completing the time trials? Well, for most, if not all kids, they would not find this very enjoyable at all. But upon completion, you unlock a designer's commentary for each level in the game as you play it. They talk about lighting, textures, the different animations that Sly has as he moves through these levels, and more. Even though a major complaint that people have about this game is that it is far too short, is that it has great replayability due to the amount of extra unlockables there are. You aren't required to get every single mystery bottle, but 100%ing the game is a fun and great achievement that I'd like to do eventually. That's right, I actually still haven't 100%ed this game. In fact, when I started writing for this video, I realized that I don't remember the second half of the Vicious Voodoo chapter, and basically none of the Fire in the Sky chapter. But I do remember fighting Clockwork in the final battle. Perhaps I get my wires crossed with the second Sly Cooper game, which is my favorite of the original three, also considering the last time I played any of the Sly Cooper games was at least 13 to 14 years ago, so from watching 100% playthroughs and reading the wikis, it's greatly jogged my memory on lots of gameplay mechanics I've forgotten about. Thinking back, the reason I don't remember the second half of Vicious Voodoo is that the minigames for this chapter were way too hard for me as a kid, so I'm pretty sure I would make my dad beat them for me. And as far as the Fire in the Sky chapter, I'm honestly not sure why my mind runs blank. However, I do remember that Chapter 2, Sunset Snake Eyes, is my favorite chapter of the game. Set in Mesa City, Utah, we are introduced to Mugshot, the muscles of the Fiendish Five. But he wasn't always like that. As a child, he was bullied for being the runt of the litter, so he turned to wanting to be like the gangsters he would see in movies. Mugshot spent the rest of his childhood training to become as strong as ever and take revenge on the bullies who wronged him. Eventually, he took control of Mesa City, constructing a massive casino and forcing the people out of the city. Everything about this chapter makes it my favorite. The overall level design looks great, the enemies look silly and are more aggressive than that of the previous chapter, and the music really ties together the overall theme of Gangster Ran Casino. This chapter also contains a racing minigame with Murray, as he is challenged by some of Mugshot's goons to earn a treasure key. There's also another minigame including Murray, where he is required to make a run to get another treasure key, but requires backup fire to be protected from more of Mugshot's goons. The final battle of this chapter against Mugshot is once again pretty straightforward like the Sir Rally fight, as Mugshot walks around. Quotes around walks because this dog's legs are so disproportionate to his body from never hitting leg day that he moves around by traversing the ground using his hands like a monkey. Anyways, as Mugshot is moving around, there are these crystal steel leg structures evenly placed around the battle zone. Sly must hit mirrors that light up the crystals, which in turn make Mugshot burn? I'm still not really sure what the science is behind this level. There are 3 phases to this battle, with the final phase requiring great use of the spire jump technique. After defeating Mugshot, the gang escapes once again from Carmelita as she instead busts Mugshot. The backstories of all the villains of the first Sly are fairly sad. Well, except for Sir Rally the Frog, who was just a rich prick who got bored and wanted to steal. But everyone else's backstory stemmed from a childhood of being bullied and unloved. Except for Clockwork, who was literally just fueled by being a hater of the Cooper bloodline. He crafted a completely new body made up of robotic parts, even replacing his internal organs. He's believed to be hundreds, possibly even over 1,000 years old. As a self-proclaimed hater myself, I too would replace my entire mortal body to stock a bloodline for hundreds of years simply because... well, the reason why Clockwork hates the Coopers is never actually confirmed. Regardless, in Sly 1, it's teased that Clockwork isn't actually dead and does come back in the second game, Band of Thieves, which of course we will talk about soon. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate a like, and if you want to see more videos from me in the future, be sure to subscribe. Have a nice day!